大家早上好. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Yale Center Beijing. This is Yale University's only university-wide center outside of its U.S. campus, representing all its 15 schools. I'm Carol Lee Rafferty. I am a Yale College alumna and also the executive director of Yale Center Beijing. Throughout the year, we host events such as these, where we convene thought leaders and scholars from all sectors and disciplines to discuss the most interesting and important topics throughout the world or facing humanity. So if you're not already a follower of our WeChat account or Weibo account, please feel free to do so about our upcoming events. Today, we have the distinguished pleasure to do this hybrid event on the book, The Secret Syllabus, together with a longtime partner and collaborator, the Princeton University Press Beijing office. Ling Shi will talk more about it. But I want to say that we are just so delighted to kick off this series with a book that's very relevant to the audiences here we have today. This series is really a joint effort for us to be able to share more of the most cutting edge and fascinating ideas that are happening in the academic world, in the US and around the world, to audiences here in China. And I understand that today we have both an in-person and a hybrid audience, and I'll be able to share with Jay and Terry later the numbers that we're getting today, even on a Saturday morning. They are working there on a Friday afternoon or evening, so I'm very grateful to that. Before Ming, our moderator today, introduces them, I want to quickly also thank our PUP, Princeton University Press Beijing office team members who made this event possible and is providing books at a discounted price here, sold here at the Yale Center Beijing. So all of you will be able to get, if you wish, purchase a book at a discounted price. A little bit about Ming. Uh, Yes, a little bit about Ming. I'm so delighted to be able to invite her to be a moderator on this occasion. Ming is, like me, a Yale College alumna. She has been a longtime educator. She herself was born and raised in Fujian, moved to the United States at the age of 8, and was an East Asian Studies major at Yale University. So a lot of the travails and the journeys that Jay and Terry talked about in this book, she had personally gone through. And I know that that would make this today a very fruitful discussion. I want to now welcome the Executive Director for Princeton University Press's Beijing office, Ling-Shi Li, to say a few words as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Welcome to the place on the Saturday evening. So I want to, and thanks for the YCB colleagues for hosting this series event. As Carol mentioned, Princeton University Press has a profound relationship with Yale in terms of disseminating scholarly conversations. So a little bit of the history, I just checked the statistics in our system. For the past 100 years, Princeton University Press has published more than 200 Yale affiliate scholars across fields, including one of our authors of the book today. So I'm so delighted to see this collaboration between New Jersey and New Haven come to Beijing today. Yeah. So in the form of this Princeton-Yale Ideas series. And I hope to extend my gratitude to our partnership for making this happen. And my gratitude also goes to Professor Phelan and Professor Terry Burnham, and also Ms. Mingrong Weng for your time and participation today to kick off the inaugural event in the series. So I just want to very briefly talk about the press and what we're doing in China. Princeton University Press published the peer-reviewed books across the disciplines that connect authors and readers globally. We embrace the highest standards of scholarship, inclusivity, and diversity in our book programs. And because of this commitment, we have been entrusted with collaborations of authors that shape the world of learnings and ideas, just as what we're doing today. So we're also the first and so far the only American university press opening an office in China. I think YCB definitely served a very successful example and inspiration for us. So our mission in China is a two-way street. We hope we can bring the best ideas, the Chinese scholarship, and their perspective to the attention of global audience. And we're also bringing the English language works into China to foster this global learning, such as today. So in this regard, I think the press in China and YCB share the very same mission. So that is the unwavering foundation of our partnership. So today, Weng Laoshi will soon introduce our authors and the books. And last is the Secret Syllabus is a feature title from the Princeton book series called Skills for Scholars. So the theory is dedicated to promoting the best academic practices and ways of reflecting those practices, its efficacy and influence. So, okay, I will move the floor to Weng Laoshi. Let's have fun today. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning. It's very wonderful to see everyone here today on a bright, yes, but not sunny, Saturday morning. When Lacey said this is a collaboration between New Jersey and New Haven, I truly resonated with that, partly because I was raised in New Jersey. So I was raised in New Jersey and I went to university in New Haven. So this is great. When Carol first asked me to moderate this panel, I was surprised because I haven't been back to Beijing for about 5 years now. So it is the Yale Center is familiar yet a little bit different. But as I read the book over the last 3 weeks, I realized why. Because I resonated with a lot of concepts, information that Dr. Burnham and Dr. Phelan talked about in the book. And as I went through it, I took notes and I thought about what are the things that I want to talk about today. But before that, I want to introduce the two professors, the two authors, partly because this is really a service because I haven't seen a lot of professors going out of their way to write a book like that, to tell undergraduate students and even graduate students, and perhaps for some of the students in the room who are looks a little bit younger, what you could be looking forward to do in the future. So without further ado, let me first introduce, let me sit down first. Okay, great. All right, so first on the screen, wait, on the screen, you can only see Dr. Phelan. So maybe we should start with Dr. Oh, never mind. So on the top left corner, you'll find Dr. Terry Burnham. Dr. Terry Burnham is a professor at Chapman University, but he received his PhD in business economics from Harvard University, and he has done a number of professorships at Harvard Kennedy School, the University of Michigan, and Harvard Business School. He also have worked in the industry. So if you read the introduction for our event today, you should know that he also worked at Goldman Sachs and is the president of Progenics Pharmaceutical, a startup in biotech companies. I wonder if this is how you guys met. Oh no, you guys met as a graduate student, right? Moving forward, we have on the bottom center, you'll find Dr. J. Phelan. Dr. Faye Phelan is a professor at UCLA, focusing in biology, but mostly in evolutionary genetics and aging. So this is very much a STEM-related field for the STEM students here. If you're interested in learning more about that, this could be a perfect opportunity to ask questions. Dr. Phelan is very passionate about equipping students with the skills they need to succeed. And we can see that by the fact that they actually wrote this book. And it's in China, well, not in China, but actually talking about this in China because they're working more and more with Chinese students as well. Going forward, I'm going to pass the microphone to Dr. Burnham and Dr. Phelan as they have prepared a really wonderful presentation for you.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Terry Burnham, and Jay and I are going to talk today for about 30 minutes to give you a little sample from our book, The Secret Syllabus. And we're going to go back and forth with these prepared comments, and then we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A. Jay and I, and one of the topics we're going to talk about today is relationships. Can you go back, Jay? So you can see that Jay and I met many years ago. This is my apartment in Cambridge, Massachusetts, more than 20 years ago. And thank you both to the Yale Center and to Princeton University Press. We've been treated very well by Princeton University Press, and we're excited about today's event here. So one of the topics we're going to talk about today is relationships. And you can see that one of the most important relationships in our lives were each other. So more than 20 years ago, we started working together, and we have written 2 books together, and we've each written a book separately, although Jay's separate book is a giant textbook and mine is a small book. So here we are as young men in Cambridge in graduate school where we met. So why should you listen to us? Well, we've been doing this for a long time. Here's Jay teaching a giant STEM biology class at UCLA. And a long history of teaching. We've each taught for, I don't want to say it, but I'd say more than 30 years. And this is one of Jay's classes at UCLA. This is my class I teach at Chapman University, which is one of the questions that Meng said she might ask later is, how do you decide between a liberal arts school and a larger research school? I teach at a smaller school near Disneyland called Chapman University. And this is what our classrooms look like. We have small classes. So we both have been very interested in teaching, and we both have won teaching awards everywhere that we've taught. We each won teaching awards at Harvard, and Jay has won teaching awards at UCLA, and I've won them at Chapman. Here's Jay leading his parade to get his PhD at Harvard. I was on the balcony at this point, I think, then followed on later on. This is one of the yards at Harvard. This is us standing outside the Harvard bookstore when our first book together, Mean Genes, came out. I should know the title in Chinese, but I don't. But it's sold very well in Chinese. Here are some of the various editions around the world of Mean Genes, different languages. And you might think that the 2 of us had a very easy time when we were in college. We each have our PhDs from Harvard. We have studied at some of the finest universities in the US, UCLA, the University of Michigan, Yale, MIT, and Harvard. We've taught at some of the finest universities. We teach at Chapman and UCLA now, but we've taught at Harvard, MIT, and Michigan before. We've published 4 books and many research articles in academic publications. So you might think, great, these guys had it easy. They went through college very simply. What can they teach me unless I'm like they are? But that's not true. We both had our troubles. So when Jay applied to Yale, where he went for one of his graduate degrees, he was told by the professor he was meeting, your transcript is literally the worst transcript I have ever seen. And it included more than 1 F. In fact, Jay didn't even admit to me until recently the number of Fs. I thought it was just 1, but it's not true. I won't out him, but there's more than 1 F. Part of the reason, here is Jay on his motorcycle. I think you recently got a ticket in the same street for riding your motorcycle with an incorrect helmet, right? Jay enjoyed college in every sense of the word, which included not always doing great in class. So I'm not just outing Jay. I also did not have a great college experience. My Chinese went away there, Jay. You used the phrase to lie flat. Is that right in China? So I took a semester off from college and did nothing basically. And at the University of Michigan, some of my classes were small, but some had 300 people. And I sat in the back of these large classrooms and I felt as though the professor had nothing in common with me. And I believe this is a felony. I scratched into the surface of many wooden desks at the University of Michigan the phrase Frodo lives, which was indicative of my involvement in the class. So both of us had trouble in college getting focused. So what's the take-home message for this? I'll repeat this at the very end as well. If you go out to dinner tonight, you might spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes looking at restaurant reviews. If you learn how to drive, almost everyone gets an instructor to learn how to drive, but almost no one thinks they need to be taught how to go to college. And in fact, everyone needs to be taught how to go to college. So it's silly for you to try to go to college without having learned from people who've been there before you. And we won't go into too much detail about the other books, but we really think our book is the most serious for dealing with the content of academics at college. There are lots of books that tell you about, how to get along with your roommate and so forth, but the Secret Syllabus is devoted to your academic success. How do you get great grades? How do you succeed in getting recommendation letters? How do you get into graduate school, and how do you get high-paying jobs? And again, we learned these lessons by making mistakes that were extremely costly to us. And you don't have to make the same mistakes, because you can read our book and learn from our experiences.
Okay, I'm going to talk about a couple of topics in our book. One of the features of the Secret Syllabus is that we cover a whole lot of topics. So clearly we can't tell you everything today, but we thought we'd give you a little bit of a taste of the sorts of things that we try to help students out. And a lot of this has come not just from the fact that both Terry and I struggled when we were students, which you've already seen, yes, we did, but also that we've taught lots and lots of students. We've taught more than 25,000 students. The current term at UCLA, I have one class with about 380 students. I have another class with 40 students. I have a very large number of students who are from China, so I've had many opportunities to talk with them about just what their plans are, what their academic future is going to be, what their past has been. They come to the US. I want to know, do your parents think that you're going back to China when you're finished here? Are you going to go back to China? And just having these conversations where I see people navigate their way through. So the first thing I want to talk about is that many people don't realize how important it is that you have to develop relationships, because someday you're going to need a job, or you're going to need a recommendation letter to go to medical school or law school or graduate school. Terry and I get emails all the time from students who are looking for things like this. And here's an example of one that I received. And I like this because this is pretty representative of what we see all the time. So this student writes, "Hey, professor, I'm looking for a research position, and I want to know if you do research and need any students." What do you think about that email? Is this going to get a good response? Is this going to get Nolan a research position? Well, I'll tell you what, the first answers are, it's not a great email. It's not likely to get him what he wants. And that's unfortunate, because he might be a great student, but when I get lots and lots of these, I have to decide, who do I think is going to be best for those positions? So in the book, we try to say, all right, how could you be better? Because any email that you write is something that can be improved on. There is an idea that people in business talk about, and that is that every time you get 10 meetings, you're going to maybe get 3 good prospects of having success, whether you're selling something or recruiting people or anything. And then from those 3 good prospects, you're going to maybe get 1 sale. It turns out in college, it's pretty similar. You're going to need to have some mentors, professors who can help you on your professional way. We like to make the analogy that if you write 10 emails to professors, instructors of yours, that might lead to 3 with whom you get multiple contacts. And if you have 3 instructors that you have multiple contacts with, one of those people might turn into a long-term ally. And when you look at that over the course of 4 years, okay, now you've got maybe 4 people who can help you out. And you're going to need that many. So that's sort of a strategy, but you realize it's a strategy you have to start right when you get to college. We lay out what can you do. So I'll just give you one example, but we say, figure out who are the instructors who are working in areas that seem to motivate you, that you like them. Make contact with them. How do you do that? Here's an example, and you don't have to read the whole thing here, but this is just an email that was not solicited. The student said, Dr. Phelan, I felt compelled to email you today. Today was the best LS 107, a genetics class, the best lecture I have attended all quarter. The chicken codominance study, the evolution of antibiotic resistance, a young T.H. Morgan, and the raccoon pick were just a few highlights. I was positively giddy during and after lecture. I eagerly await your next lecture on Friday. This is a great email in contrast to the earlier one. This student, Kim, she's not asking for anything, but she's telling me, I was there. I appreciated it. You're having an impact on me, and here are some specific reasons why. From my perspective, that's great. When I have a second interaction with her, I'm already likely to want to help her somehow, if that's possible. Here's another one. You can see it's a long email, but as soon as I scan it when it comes in, I see, my name is Simone H. I'm taking and loving your class this fall. I just came in before Thanksgiving break wearing my track and field sweatshirt, and you so kindly lent me a copy of your book, The Secret Syllabus. She writes this whole long email saying, you know, after raving about it to my parents, my dad picked it up for a few chapters, thought it was fantastic. I will be getting him his own copy as a Hanukkah gift. She's just writing to me to say, I really like your class. This is a beneficial thing for me. You have to remember that your professors are people too. They're investing a lot of time. If you can send them a little note that says that. Is it personal? Does it talk about the course? Does it show that you've thought about it, that you've made some kind of effort? As long as all those things are true, it's going to be useful to you in the long run. And I'm not saying that you have to do this. This is your way that you can manipulate someone. I'm just saying that this is the first step of a satisfying and probably productive relationship. Afterwards, you have to figure out, how do you deepen the relationship? Once you're not in the class anymore, then it becomes a different sort of challenge. And when you do that, you have to write to them. You have to be able to show them that you have value. You have to make it clear that there are features you have that set you apart. You have to show that you've done your homework. You have to show that you are an effective writer. All of those things are going to be important, and they are going to increase the likelihood that you get a response that says, hey, let's continue this discussion. Stop by my office. I'd love to hear about what your plans are or what you're doing. After that, you have to then just figure out ways to stay in contact. You don't want to be a burden to the professor, but you just want to be part of their life. Let them know that you are interested in them and that it is a satisfying relationship. Because something that will happen, here's an example of a letter that I got from a student that was after I'd had the class, after he had decided that he wanted to go to medical school, and he just wrote me a thank you note. Thank you so much for writing me a recommendation. It paid off. I've been accepted to all these schools, UCLA, Harvard. I know that your letter helped, and I appreciate how eager you were to write it for me. He also says, makes it personal. I'd like you to know that you're the reason I applied to Harvard. Before we talked about it, I thought that I wasn't really Harvard material and that nobody gets into Harvard. Your encouragement to apply to Harvard and enthusiasm made me want to apply. And now here I am now with the chance to attend. Ultimately, he did go to Harvard. So he's just writing to thank me. But is he going to need something else later? Yeah, everybody needs stuff in your professional life. Later on, he was trying to get a job as a faculty member. He said, would you be willing to write something on my behalf, just talking about my past? And I said, of course I would be happy to do that. And so then you end up becoming professional colleagues, and that's good. Here's an example of something like that. This is just from a couple of months ago. A former student of mine kept in touch with me. And we just became friends, and I advised her on how she should apply to graduate school and how she should figure out what kind of research she wanted to do. And that became a friendship. So here she got married, and she invited me to the wedding, and she wrote this nice card that I think conveys the sort of relationship that you can develop with people in your professional life. I can't fully convey the impact you've had on my life. Thank you for trusting me to join your crew, for inviting me to learn how to live through through your actions. You have shown me a life of joy, love, great music and movies, and to enjoy the little things. In gratitude, friendship, and respect, Nina. So she already now has gotten her PhD and she's doing a research job, but we're going to I think, stay professional colleagues for a long time. So a take-home message here is just that from the day you get to college, you're going to be identifying people who maybe you can develop a professional relationship, and you're going to try to nurture this. You're going to keep in touch with them, and they will always be happy to return the favor. You have to know that on day one, that later on you will need people to help you. None of us can make it alone. Another part of developing these professional relationships, you'll realize when people start giving you advice. When you go to college, when you're getting ready to go to college, everyone will tell you things like, oh, you have to go to office hours. Oh, you have to get research experience. Oh, you have to get a mentor. Oh, you have to get real world experience. And they tell you all these things, which are true. But why? Okay, why should you go to office hours? What do you do there? Let me give you an example of one way that people do office hours. It seems like, oh, you don't need help going to office hours, right? Just go and tell the professor to explain stuff again. That's going to turn out not to be a great way to do it. Here's one. So take a look at this. Isabella was in a finance class of Terry's, came to his office, shuffled in with her heavy backpack, sat down, pulled out a copy of her problem set, began talking. Can you go over problem one? Also, I have questions about other problems. Terry said, have you looked at the posted answers with the associated spreadsheet? No. So here's a question for you. I think you can tell just from my tone. Did Isabella do a good job in office hours? No. But what did she do wrong? How could she have been better when she was having this interaction? She went thinking, I'm just here to get some information. But she didn't ask Terry if it was a good time. She didn't introduce herself. Hi, my name's Isabella. I'm in your class. She went right into the details, and she didn't even do any work ahead of time. So in each one of these cases, she was conveying something that was not going to lead to them having a good relationship. So I ask you the question, what is it that you can get from office hours? This turns out to be less obvious, I think, than almost anyone realizes. And what I'll say is that, sure, you can get content, but there's a lot of other stuff you can get. And let me give you a couple of examples. These are just professors from a variety of universities, but this woman, Annette Gordon-Reed, says, this is how I get to know people. You can just come by and say hello. So true. It's very valuable when students come by and just say hello to me. Or this professor, Joe Blitzstein, is a statistics professor. He says the conversations often go beyond the course material. This is very true, and it's consistent across all the classes I've ever been part of. So you go to office hours and you can ask things like this. If you were in this class, how would you study for it? Who better to ask, right, than the instructor for the class? Or this, when it's coming time for an exam. What do you think are the elements of an ideal exam question? What are you trying to do when you write a question? That's very helpful for you to get inside their head. Or if you ask them just about their life as a researcher, because it's hard to find that. You can find content in your textbook. You can find content in YouTube videos, Khan Academy, Crash Course, or books. But how do you find out what's going on inside your professor's head? You ask them. What are the biggest misconceptions that people have about finance or about biology? If you did college over, what would you do differently when you selected your classes? You're going to find that your instructors, they have a lot of interesting stuff to say because they've gone through all of this before. I'm telling you this is all true. There's also a lot of data. This is just an excerpt from a published study that shows that most students, the majority, 54%, never went to office hours. I can tell you from my experience, I never went. It was one of my biggest mistakes as a student. But there was a significant positive relationship with their academic outcomes that each office visit ended up being related to getting a better grade in the class. There's data showing that you get more, not just because you're learning more content when you're there, but because of other things that are going on. So you'll do it because it's fun and it's valuable, but it also is going to help you in your course. So I like to remind students of this, that when you go to office hours, that's the only time that you control the agenda. Every other time, the professor decides, here's what we're going to cover, here's what we're going to talk about, here's how we're going to do it. In office hours, you get to talk about whatever you want, and you can go off the content in the course. You can do a lot of other stuff. I'll stop here, but in the book, we give a huge number of actual questions that you can use. It can be hard coming up. What am I going to say? We help you out. We're trying to make it easy for you, just as we include a lot of emails that you can use as a guide to how you might communicate.
Great. Next, I'm going to talk about how to recover from failure. And I want to just make the point that every email and every story that we tell today and we tell in the Secret Syllabus are true stories. They're not made up. We've changed the names of the students, but they're all real stories. So let's talk about Linda. So Linda was a student of Jay's at UCLA. She had a boyfriend. The boyfriend wasn't as smart and hardworking as Linda. We've all been there. And Linda's boyfriend asked her if she would cheat. So she cheated for him by putting his name on her papers. And for a while it worked out, but she got expelled from UCLA. Okay, so that's pretty much the worst outcome you can have when you start college. You get into a great school like UCLA, and then you get expelled. So Jay kept in touch with Linda, and we know where she is today. And so you should guess, where is she today? Is she a dog walker? Is she selling clothing in retail? Is she a pharmacist, or does she work at Starbucks? Okay, and the answer is that she is a pharmacist.
Does anyone have any? I want to answer.
And all of you are welcome to press on the button of the microphone and try to answer. Please, yeah, please, yeah, go ahead.
Take a guess. Take a guess. Come on.
Take a guess.
Take a guess.
是 A, B, C or D? 不想说。不想说，那就是你有个。I'm just trying to encourage a boy here.
A very young boy.
Ah,
Oh, wearing a Princeton sweatshirt. Come on.
nice.
A, B, C or D? C. C. Okay.
He picked
Okay.
C.
Can you ask the student for his or her name?
What's your name? Zhang Yiwan.
Zheng Yuan. Okay, and Zheng Yuan, how do you think Linda became a pharmacist after getting expelled from UCLA?
All right. Can I translate that? She took the wrong path.
Took the wrong path, but how did she get back on the right path? That's the question.
So she studied very hard afterward.
All
Something similar to that, I think.
right, I hope everybody's sitting down because I'm going to tell you the secret to the world. Are you ready?
We are.
This is it. This is the secret to the world. And it is, don't think about yourself. Think about the world from the perspective of the other people. Figure out how to satisfy their wants at the same time as getting what you want. So Jay and I are here to sell some books. So we're not going to tell you all the answers to Linda's story, but I will tell you that that is the key, which is, of course, she did work hard and she didn't give up. She was resilient, but she also figured out what was in the interest of the pharmacy school that eventually took her. And so whenever you want anything, you want a good grade from your teacher, you want to get no ticket from the police person who's pulled you over, you want to get through the border without any trouble, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. think about the other person's perspective. And again, going back just with that idea back to when Isabella came to my office hours, do you think a professor who's done all kinds of fun and interesting things in life wants to go back through problem 1, 2, 12, 17, and 14 after he or she has already written the answers out and posted them? Absolutely not. We do it, it's part of our job, but we'd be much happier chatting with you about other things. So Linda figured that out by doing, and we won't give you all the details, but she went on her course, she worked hard, and she figured out how to help the pharmacy school achieve its goals by letting her in. And people, some of these stories are very well known. I think everyone in the US and maybe everyone in the world knows that Michael Jordan did not make his high school basketball team. Okay, so Michael Jordan, who is either the first or second best, depending on whether you're a LeBron James fan or not, in the history of basketball, failed at high school. He went home, he told his mom that he was quitting, and his mom told him to shut up and get back out there and work harder. And we have many other funny examples. Hilda Soltis was not college material. She became a cabinet member in the US government. Sidney Poitier was told to quit acting and learn how to wash dishes better. He won an Academy Award. And then one of the most prolific published scholars who became a professor at Harvard was literally kicked out of school. So we don't just tell you the stories, but we provide specific methods for becoming resilient and doing better. And again, both Jay and I are, Jay is a biologist, I'm very interested in biology. We love nothing more than seeing really famous, successful people talk about how horrible their life can be. Here's Charles Darwin even speaking English or writing English correctly, but I am very poorly today and very stupid and hate everybody and everything. He also felt lost for many years of his life. So these are some of the approaches that we detail in the Secret Syllabus. These are specific methods that people can do to become more resilient. So I think maybe my favorite one is working harder versus working differently. So we tell a story about me. I got an F on an exam at the University of Michigan. And rather than just trying to study harder, I did a little detective work to figure out how the exam had been written, where the questions came from, and how the students who had done well on the exam. In my dormitory, there was a woman named Joyce, and Joyce had gotten 100% on the exam that I had gotten an F on. So I went and talked to Joyce, and I figured out how she did so well. And the answer was to study differently. So each of these techniques for resilience are discussed in some detail in the Secret Syllabus, and they each have been proven effectively, both through anecdote and through the kind of research that Jay discussed for office hours. So here's the bottom line: successful pharmacists. Pathway took a long time. She grew up a lot from the mistake, and she worked hard and she worked smart, and she figured out what the pharmacy schools want in order to get what she wanted. And she has a new boyfriend.
Thank God.
Thank God. Loser. So what's the take-home message on resilience? Everyone fails. Michael Jordan failed at basketball. We all have these troubles. When you see people on various other areas of the world, you may think their lives are perfect. They're not. Resilience is the ability to recover and thrive, and it's not just something you're born with. So you might think, oh, those lucky people, that Linda, she was lucky. She was born learning how to be resilient. Not true. It is a skill that you can cultivate and develop, and we can all get better at it.
I find at UCLA that my students want to know almost more than anything else about me. Not, oh, how was it writing a textbook? Or can you teach us more about genetics? They want to know, how could you be a terrible student and then figure out how to change your life so that you could get into Yale and then you could get into Harvard? And that idea that people struggle, people have bad periods in their life, but that you can recover. And not only does it mean that you're not doomed forever, but it means usually that you end up better. And I will say in the case of Linda, because she was my student, when she applied for pharmacy school, I wrote her recommendation letter. She got kicked out of UCLA because of my class. But I saw how she had learned. I saw how she had changed. I saw how she had learned from the mistake. And from that, I saw real character. And I was able to write that this is a student who I think is going to be a top quality pharmacist. I think that she will be an asset to your program and someone that you'll be proud of later. Let's not have one bad thing ruin her professional life. So I think that helped out a lot too, that I would write a letter like that. One last topic that I want to mention that we'll talk about, because in the Secret Syllabus, Terry and I talk sometimes just about how can you change your behavior? How can you be smarter, work smarter? Sometimes we tell you just how can you do certain things because no one ever taught you how to do them properly. For instance, you have to study and learn. Whether you're in high school now or you're in college, you get material and then you have to learn it. You have to perform on a test. So the question is how do you do that? How do you learn? I remember sitting there and thinking, oh, I see everybody writing down what the instructor is saying. Oh, now I see people have yellow highlighters. They're coloring stuff. Oh, maybe I should do that. And that was it. That was how I was supposed to learn how I should study best. And there was a published paper that had a survey in it and it asked students this. It said, would you say that you study the way you do because a teacher taught you to study that way? Yes or no? What do you think? How many of you think that students study the way that they do because a teacher taught them how to study?
Let's have a quick survey in the room. All the yes, raise your hand. 0 hands. We have one. Okay.
Okay.
And all the no's? Maybe 8. Okay. The other ones don't know?
In this study, here's what they found, that 80% of students said, no, nobody taught me how to study. That causes you to have the question. You have to wonder on your own, as a 7th grader, 8th grader, high school student, have you figured out the most effective way to study? And I can tell you what the answer is. I'm a little kind in the slide. I say probably not. The answer is no. You don't know the best way to study. There's no reason why you would have on your own come up with all of the tactics and strategies that we know from research are most effective. And here's something that you should think about if you even are questioning that. There are tens of thousands of education researchers, and they devote their life to figuring out, how do we remember stuff better? How do we incorporate what we've learned with other stuff that we already know? How do we do this most efficiently? And there are thousands of journals where they publish their research, telling people, if you do this, you are better at it. If you do this, you're better at it. This doesn't work. And because of that, we know a lot about how to learn effectively. And Terry and I have written down the most useful strategies that you should take. I can't go into all the details of them now, but let me give you one example of the sort of thing that we talk about that researchers know very well. There are 2 types of studying. You could, let's say you're doing math. One of them is called blocking. With blocking, it means that whatever concept you're studying, you just keep studying over and over and over lots of those types of problems until you really have them. The other one says, oh, we have been working on 4 different topics in math over the past month. Interleaving is a practice that says, study one type of problem, now go to another one, now go to a 3rd type, now go to a 4th, now go back to the 1st type, then go back and bounce around when you are studying. So when I explain this to you and you think about, all right, we have a human geography AP exam and we've studied 5 topics. Should you just study them one at a time, or should you keep bouncing around? When you ask students about their practice, this graph here shows that when people were using blocked practice, they did better. So if they just studied all of the problems of one type, then they moved on, they did better. So that would make you think, all right, it seems like we have the answer. Well, let me ask you the question here. And I think from my tone, you're probably going to have a clue what the answer is, but I'm going to ask you. So people perform better on practice questions when they use blocking. On actual exams, which technique is better?
Do we have any taker? Anyone want to answer this question? Maybe the older students in the room? We have older students? Potentially, right? What do you guys think? Which one? Blocking. You wanna explain? Does that work for you? There's a button.
So actually, I do not review for my task before I take it. But actually, I think like the professor just mentioned several data that shows that blockings are more effective than interleaving.
When people are practicing, they do much better. But it turns out that when it comes time for an exam, look at these data. On the test, performance when you have prepared using interleaving is actually better. And the crazy thing about there have been many studies showing exactly this, but the thing that's crazy is that when you ask the students, before they know how they did on the test, they said, how do you think you did based on your having to study it blocking versus interleaving? People even had more confidence when they studied it via blocking, and they didn't do as well. There's something about bouncing around that causes your brain to have to first solve, what kind of problem is this? And that helps you understand the material better. So one of the aspects of studying and learning that we can say without any hesitation, I can say interleaving is better. And what we find out is that even when we think a different way works better, it's not always the case. Sometimes you have to trust the research that there is about whatever the particular topic is. And this is one that we have a huge amount of information about. Now, I'll show you this list here. This is 6 of the most effective things that you can do if you want to learn material. If you want to have the absolute most efficient and effective way, you have to do these things. And many of them have names, things like the generation effect. And for that just means that when you go to class, if you write your own notes, that actually causes you to learn the material better than if you read notes. Even if you take notes really slowly and you fall behind, even if you feel like your notes are not very, very good, even if your professor or your teacher will post onto the internet all of their slides and you can sit there and you can really focus and read them while they do it, it turns out that writing them down is dramatically better. It's the single most effective thing you could do in class. We don't like to do it because it's very hard. But one of my favorite papers in the whole world of education research summed it all up in a title. It said, taking notes is better than having notes. So the act of taking them is part of the learning. But there are other things about how can you take better notes? How can you then study something called elaborative interrogation? Or how do you practice retrieving things that you've learned over a long period of time? How do you space things out? So there's something that I'm always telling my kids. They have to study way before they're supposed to. And they're like, but I'm going to forget it. And it turns out that if you learn something and then you forget it and then you relearn it, that seems like a waste of time. When you relearn it, you are much, much better at understanding the concept that you have studied. So for the same amount of time, doing your studying that way rather than all at once turns out to be much better. So on the topic of studying, we can say this. There are lots and lots of smart researchers. I say this with firsthand knowledge, I guess secondhand knowledge, because my wife is an educational researcher and she spends all of her time trying to figure this out. And she's very smart and she works with smart people. So just remember that there are people who are working to help you. You don't have to read all the research because Terry and I already did. And we've tried to summarize it here.
Okay, so we have a simple suggestion as the bottom line for this talk. Read the Secret Syllabus. Okay, we can't go through the whole book here. Here are some of the other topics that we cover, but there are even more than this. Planning, how to think about your semester, your college life and beyond, how to do well in your interviews for jobs, and how to generalize these lessons for life. That was our secret of the Secret Syllabus, is if you figure out how to do well in college, you also will figure out how to do well in life, because it's the same basic approach. So to summarize again, buy and read the Secret Syllabus. And what's the point? College is not high school. It's a different culture, particularly if you're going to a different culture, right? A different country to study. And it's super valuable, right? You have the chance to change your trajectory. Jay gave the example of the student who got into Harvard after being a student with Jay and so forth. But you are silly if you just go to college and use the same strategies that you did in your prior school. So if you go out and buy books, you know, we as Ming said, we spent a lot of time in this book. We actually began it about 20 years ago. We began collecting notes that long ago. There's no way that we were making enough money to make it worth our time. This is a labor of love for us. It's so great when people get the message and do well, and it's so sad when they do things that are self-defeating. So if you go out and buy books, most books, or you go on the internet, you will get 2 or 3 kinds of advice. Advice number 1, unhelpful. Get to class early. Duh. Thank you, mom and dad. Or incomplete. Go to office hours. Great. Go to office. What do I do when I get there? And sometimes you get information that's just wrong. Mm-hmm. Right. So here they are. Go to class. Learn to say no. Blah blah blah. I think all of this is completely common sense. You know all this. And the question is, how do I do it? Why do I do it? And then sometimes people just tell you things that are wrong. So one that we talk about frequently and we encounter all the time is people thinking that when they are 6 years old, they have to have decided what they want to do. The earlier you commit, the better. And we could not disagree more strongly with that. So we wrote the book, and I made the point earlier. I don't know if I said this. My wife is American-born Chinese. We lived in Beijing for 2 years, or in China for 2 years, once on her own when she was doing her archaeology PhD, and once with our 3 daughters. And my wife loves restaurants. Beijing's a great city for restaurants. My wife would spend a lot of time trying to figure out where we were going to dinner. It's like, honey, there's 40,000 restaurants in Beijing. We can't go to all of them in one summer. Let's pick the best ones. So that's completely common, and it's smart, right? Again, no one's getting in a car and driving without some advice. And those events are nowhere near as important as you making the most of your college education. So it's absolutely nuts for you not to spend a few hours learning what we have distilled from, I mean, I guess it's closing in on 100 years between the two of us, Jay, that we've been around college. How old are you? You're so old.
Oh, no.
So, what's our goal here?
Information? Are you sure you don't want to share the information?
It's better to be young, but we are knowledgeable. So
yes,
you know, this is a book that can provide you with a lot of different, we can play a lot of different roles here. Be a coach, speaking in an inspiring way, hopefully. Similar to a trainer, figuring out how to do techniques, therapist for resiliency, tour guide, save you time going to the wrong places, tutor, older brother or sister, professor. So as we said, college is important. You would never do these activities, other activities without help. But most people, in fact, try to do college for the first time and the only time on their own. It's just silly, to be polite. So our goal when we wrote the Secret Syllabus was better outcome, less effort. So I think we have time for a bunch of questions. We'd love to hear what you think.
Thank you, Dr. Burnham, Dr. Phelan, for your insightful presentation and the words of advice that I'm hearing right now. I do have a whole bunch of questions. So let me quickly go through maybe a couple of them, and then we can open the floor up for Q&A from the audience. I know some of you should be preparing your questions right now. Consider this office hour. We're testing you right now, okay? Come in with insightful questions that's not related to, solving a problem, all right? Or maybe, yeah, you just want to introduce yourself. That could also work. As you went through your PowerPoint and I was hearing the talk and I'm thinking back to the Secret Syllabus, I'm finding myself nodding a lot, right? Wow, this is what happened to me in college. I got that C in English. And, I didn't really know what I want to do when I went to office hour. You offer so many good advice, but sometimes I think what we want to do is try to our best to build in these skills before they even leave for college, right? We have a lot of students in the audience that are much younger. I am assuming maybe in middle school. So in that sense, if as a professor and you're working with a lot of Chinese international students as well, what are the challenges you see facing those students, not just academically, but socially and psychologically as they move into university? Do you find yourself?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure, it's a really good question because one of the things that I have noticed before, I teach a class at UCLA, just a little seminar where we help students figure out how to succeed at college. And I discovered that when I taught it to the very first quarter students who had just started UCLA, it didn't go very well. Because everyone in the class thought, hey, I just got into UCLA. I rule. I'm fantastic. I figured it all out. But when I then, in another year, I said, I'm going to teach this in the second quarter. And I'm going to teach it to either second quarter first year students or even second year students or third year students. They came in and everyone there was taking notes. They're like, wow, oh, this is useful. Because what happens is you realize, oh, it really is a different culture. One of the first things that people notice that was a huge surprise to me too, is that when you get to college, you're not in class very much compared to high school. In high school, middle school, you're in class all the time. Suddenly you have all this free time. Well, how do you spend that free time? How do you allocate your efforts? And no one's ever taught you how. And at first, a lot of people go crazy. And then you have this other thing that happens, that you're around all these people and you have a lot of other people who have no training about how to do anything. And everyone is nervous and insecure, and they start talking about, oh, I want to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. And I ask them, I'm like, what's a cardiothoracic surgeon? But they don't really know. They know that sounded good when they were 10, but it has the effect of making all these other students think, oh no, I'm really not ready. I haven't figured out what I want to do. I haven't even thought about that. And so you get into this culture where a lot of people can make you feel like you're not good enough, or you're not adequate, or you're behind somehow. And that's an important piece of advice that I give to students. And it doesn't just come from other students. Your parents very much want you to be able to say, I'm going to be a computer scientist, or I want to be an electrical engineer. Your parents will love you so much more if you say that when you are, 14 years old, because they worry about you. But it turns out that if you just say, I need to explore stuff, I need to figure out what is East Asian studies. Nobody in high school knows what that is. And then you learn, oh, this is really useful, or something like that. So this being open-minded, realizing that you're going to have to not relearn, but learn how to thrive in this culture when you first get there is an important lesson to know. Just that things that work when you're in high school, they just don't work because it's a different sort of learning. And you could get through high school just on the sheer power of your IQ, that you have a big brain, you can remember stuff, and you'll succeed. You get to college and suddenly they're asking you questions or they're requiring you to do things that are much more difficult. I have some tests in genetics, and the students are so frustrated that they want to write down everything they've memorized about it. And I don't care about that. I want them to solve the problem. And the solution is very short, but they have to figure it out. And so getting used to a world where your great memorizing abilities don't do enough for you to succeed. You just have to go into it thinking, okay, I'm going to have an open mind. I'm going to learn new stuff. I'm going to ask questions. And that can be a hugely valuable thing to do, to go in it thinking, I'm not on a training mission to get this career. I'm learning how to learn. I'm learning who I am. I'm developing as a person. I want to figure out what kind of person I want to be.